Hello everyone, how are you doing? Welcome back to 40 Days of JavaScript, and today is day 34, special day because it's a project day of the module. Project of the module means whatever we have learned in this module, we'll now apply them to build something cool. Before I talk about what we are going to build, how are you going to build, let's do a quick recap of this module. This is module 5 of 40 Days of JavaScript. And this is the module where we are learning a lot of advanced JavaScript concepts like object-oriented programming principles, ES6 classes, prototype chain, JavaScript modules, advanced data structure that applies in JavaScript like data collections with map, set, WeakMap, weakset, all these things. And now we'll be doing the project. That doesn't end the module. We have one more special item right after this in day 35 where we'll be debugging the real world problem. Are you excited for that? I'm very much excited. But before we go there, today is the time that we build the project. So what we'll be building today? We are going to build a simple library management system. Let's call it LMS, library management system. A library management system where you can add certain books and then the member of the library can borrow them, member of the library can return them. So that kind of library management system. Why I have selected a library management system? Because I thought this will be a very good start of a bigger project, because today we are going to bring all the fundamentals together. That means we will learn how to think in terms of object oriented programming. When we have a use case like library, what are the different objects that we can think of, what are the relationship between them, all these things, so that in future once you start picking up certain use cases, you also will be able to think through that way. Then how to organize our code better when the number of files or number of interaction points increases. That means how to utilize modules. We have learned about JavaScript modules, isn't it? So how to apply them in work. And then where we can apply some of this set, map, weak map, weak set, all these things or some of those things into our project. So today's objective is to build the base of a library management system, and then with that it is completely up to your creativity and the way that you want to extend it, that you can make it even much more better. Of course, the project will have its UI part where we'll be doing the DOM manipulations and all these things that we have learned before in the previous modules. And that's where 40 days of JavaScript is very special, because today whatever you will be doing is all based on yesterday what you have done. I hope you are enjoying that part. At the end of this video, I have also given an assignment to you. So make sure that you do this assignment so that you also apply whatever you're learning in this project. So without any further delay, let us get started with understanding the scope of library management system in this particular session. We know library is all about books, isn't it? Because we're talking about book libraries. So when you have books in the library, you deal with lot of different aspect of the books. For example, let's consider a software system where all the books that belong to a particular library can be added, like an inventory of all the books. And then from that list of books, a member of the library can come, view the list of books, and can borrow a particular book for reading. Borrowing a book means that person will hold that book for X number of days. Now, after the person finish reading the book, or because of any case want to return it back, they can come to the library and they can return that book. So when somebody is borrowing a book, that book is not available for anybody else to borrow unless until the person has already returned that book to the library, right? So these are the use cases that I can think of. Now, if I have to design a library management system, very basic UI that we are talking about, right? We are not going for a fancy UI. We are more about learning the functionalities and how to structure the project from those point of view, right? So if I think from those point of view, I need to have some section through which I'll be able to add a new book to the library, right? A new book has come, I want to add to the book inventory so that that book gets added, the book collection or the book database. So I should have a feature through which a book can be added. That's what I call it as add book. Once the book is added, those books should be listed somewhere so that any member can come and start looking into the list of books so that they can borrow that book, right? So we need to have one more section which we can call as available books, where all the books will be listed. Now, if I am borrowing a particular book and as a member, like Tapas is a member to this library, tapaScript library, for example, and if I am borrowing a book, whatever the books that I have borrowed over the period of time, I should have a list of it, right? So that I know that how to return that. So there should be a borrowed book section. And the book that I have borrowed should not be listed in the available books because nobody else should borrow it again because I have already taken it until unless I return that book back. So once you return the book back from the borrowed book section, it goes back to the available book section. So that's the use case or the functionality that I can think about our very basic TapaScript library management system. Does it sound simple? Okay, let's make it a little more complex. So when you have a library management system, you might deal with different kind of persona. So what is persona? Persona at a high level, if I have to explain, this is a term that mostly designers use, the UX designer use. These are the different kind of users who will be using your system or the application. So for a library management system, so library management software, what are the different kind of users who will be using a library management software? One is definitely the members. Members means who are the member of this library, who have registered for this library, who can borrow and return the books. What is the other persona that you can think of? I can think of another persona which is called administrator or admin. A new member like you and me may not be having rights to add a new book to the library's database. It will be the administrator's responsibility to add a new book whenever a book comes into the library's database. Or if a book get lost by chance, something happened, the book is lost, that person has to make sure the person is removing that particular book from the library's database, right? So all this add, remove, or maybe there are 3 copies of the book available and there is a 4th copy coming in, so updating the number of copies available for a book, only the admin can update that. So all this kind of work admin will do, adding, deleting, updating, etc. Now once this adding, deleting, updating happening, ultimately whatever the admin is adding, updating, or deleting, the final result will be available in the available book section. Now a member can come to the place and then can borrow a book from the available books or return a book from the borrowed books. So it means that we're talking about now 2 persona, right? Let me write it down for you over here. One persona is admin and another persona is a member. What an admin can do, an admin can add a book, can delete a book, update a book, all these things. But for our project sake, we are only supporting add now. So admin can add a book. What a member can do, a member can view all available book. A member can borrow a book. A member can say return a book. Okay. Now once a book is added, admin also would like to see, right, that book got added correctly or not. So it means that admin also should be able to view all available books. So it means that view all available books, this particular thing could be a common functionality between an admin and member. If we think an admin can be a member as well, in that case, we can even have borrow a book, return a book functionality within admin also. So it's all how our customer are looking for a use case to solve. And that's the way that we'll be thinking of giving the solution to the end user. That's how it works in the real life also, right? So we are completely solution driven. We have to build a library management software right now without writing any code. We are trying to figure out how to solve this problem. And this is where, guys, whether you use AI to generate code, don't use AI to generate code, doesn't matter. What it is like the thinking, the thought process is very, very important. And how you map this use case thought process to your end code, that's what matters most. Okay. So right now we identified 2 persona, admin and member, and what are the actions that they will be taking on this particular library management system. Going back to the object oriented programming principles, very fundamental things. We spoke about it called object. Object has 2 distinguished things. One is called the state of it or properties. Another is called behavior or the methods. We have learned from the OOP principle. So it means now I can think admin as an object. It can have certain methods called adding a book, view all available books. Similarly, member can be another object, correct? And in that object, you can have other methods called viewing all available books, borrowing the book, returning the book, etc. So now we have started identifying the objects. Now we are going towards the object-oriented programming. Beside admin and member, what are the other objects that you can think about for library management system, a simple library management system? There is one very vital object that we are forgetting. What it is? What is a library about? The library is all about books, isn't it? So book can be another object. For our use case sake, book may not have any behavior as such, but it definitely will have certain properties. For example, a book will have title, a book will have author, a book will have a genre, a book will have properties like whether the book is available to borrow or not. So book will have plenty of properties. Definitely, I can consider book as another object. All right, so we are now leading towards object-oriented programming. We have identified admin as an object, member as an object, and book as an object. Now, there are a few more things that we can actually consider over here as we are stepping into object-oriented programming. An admin will definitely have a username and email for registration. A member also will have a username and email for registration to this particular app, correct? Na? Both admin and member have something in common, which is like role, because admin will have an administrator role, member will have a member role. So the role is something which is common between both admin and member. So it means there are certain commonalities between admin and member that now we can factor into something called a superclass and can apply the inheritance principle so that I can have a base class or superclass with the commonalities in place and then create admin and member out of the superclass. How does it look like? I have a base class called user. This can have properties like name and email, and then I can extend the user class, the base class, to create a new class called admin and can have only admin specific thing. And then I can also extend the user class to create a new class called member and can have the member specific thing. That way, the common thing, I don't have to repeat between admin and member. I can have them into the base class and their own things I can only keep into their individual classes. Understanding how I started with a simple design, identifying what are the different objects possible from that, and then started relating them the way that they can actually exist into our library management system software code. Okay, so this is how we should be thinking. There is one more object that we told, that is books. And this book is not really related to anyone at this point in time. It's an isolated books object which will have the title, author, all this kind of properties. We'll see if these books can be used or reused across different other instances of these objects or not. So we have to create user as a class. We have to create admin as a class, extend from user. We have to create member as a class, extend from user, and we also have to create books as a class. Now, how we want to architect this entire solution in terms of modules? We have learned about modules, like why we want to create modules, because this is a great place where we can actually do the separation of their individual duties and can import and export them wherever they make sense, right? So let's get started with coding. Enough talking. Let's start going to VS Code, start putting each of these things one by one. Let's get started by bootstrapping a project, and we can do it using this command called npx tapaScript space js hyphen base. This will create a project with JavaScript and Tailwind CSS. What is the project name? Let's give it the name called library for now. You can give any name. Basically, you can give it like library management system or LMS. I'm giving as library. Do you want to use Tailwind CSS? Yes, I'm going to use that, and it's going to create a project structure for me inside day 34. I can see like library has got created. All the dependencies are installed, and now I can go inside this library folder and I can do npm run start, or if you have yarn, do a yarn start or pnpm start, whatever you want. And this is going to run it on available port. For me, it is http colon localhost 3002. So let's go there. So I see a UI that comes with that utility. What I'm going to do, I'm going to remove that because I want to add my own UI right now. So for that purpose, I'll go to index.html file. I don't need this anymore. Let it keep running. So this is where I have all this code. I'm going to remove them completely. This div to div I'm going to remove because I'm going to write things from scratch. And I have a SSC folder. Inside that there is a main.js file, which is already been included over here as a type module. And differ you should know from the session 1 video 1 module. You know, from a few sessions back we discussed about the module. All right, and it also has index.css file, everything attached. So let me first change this to library management system. Before we start writing any JavaScript code, before we start putting anything in the modules and all these things, let us decide like what is our index.html is going to be. Like what are the things that we can actually add so that the UI looks relevant, UI looks cool. For the simplicity sake, let's create a select box, a combo box. A combo box with role like admin and the member we discuss. If admin is selected, then we will get a form where administrator can enter like what they want to create the books, and they can see the available books. Because if you've seen, for administrator there are two things that they can do. They can create a book by entering the details, and they can see the book that they have created. And when you switch member, the another option from the select box, we will see the available books, the way to borrow the books, and the way to return the books. A member should not be allowed to add a new book to the system. A member should be only be able to look into the available books and borrow and return. So you can differentiate these things also. I'm not building any authentication system like a login box or registration box, all these things, but we'll be simulating it, the underlying infrastructure, which can be very well plugged into tomorrow to any authentication system if we want, right? So focus of the project is to talk about the underlying infrastructure, like how we think, envision, and build. To start with, let's add some basic classes to body, like some background, some padding, and all those things. So we have added a gray background, a P6, so it looks little better. And then let's add a div. Let's add few classes like max width, some kind of spacing, and inside this div we are going to add all our elements. Okay, so first thing that I care about adding is a H1, a heading in our application. I'll call it as a library management system itself. Let's add an emoji also, like this book emoji, like library management system. And we can now add a few classes to make it look bigger, bolder, and in the center. We know Tailwind CSS utility classes, text 3XL to make it bigger, font bold to make it bold, text center to make it center. So far, we should be able to see our library management system is coming up. So you see this library management system header is over here. Now below header, let us add a user switcher through which we'll be able to select the admin and the member. So that later point in time in JavaScript side, we can read like what user has selected, whether admin or member. Based on that, we show hide different section of the UI, and we can take care of the business logic, right? Let's go step by step. By the way, don't worry if this video is bigger. If you feel bored, I can't help. But if you are sticking to it and try to code with me, try to learn, please do that. I think that will be really cool stuff. You can pause, you can understand, you can code with me, do your hands dirty. That's when you learn. Okay, let's go back to it. So below the heading, let us add a user switcher. And the user switcher, we're going to keep it inside this div. We are going to add a select box. So let's add a select box. Inside select, you usually add something called an option, right? The options are the each options in the select box. So here we can add two options. One is called member view, and let's add another option which we'll call as admin view. Okay, these are the two options. Now before this select box, we can add a label, and we can add it like, choose user view. That means you select a user view, whether it's a member view or the admin view, and based on that things will happen. Now when you add the option for select, along with the text, you also need to add the value. It means when a particular option is selected, what value you want to select, so that you can work on that value in your JavaScript world. Okay, so when a member view is selected, let's have the value as member. Let's copy this guy, let's paste this guy, and let's have the value as admin. So far great, so far good. Now label, whenever you are using label for accessibility purpose, don't forget the for attribute. Using this attribute, you connect a label accessibly with another HTML element for which you are creating this label. In our case, we are creating this label for this select box. That means there should be a way that we will be connecting this label to the select box. That's why we are having this for attribute. Put any string of your choice, something meaningful that you'll remember. We call it as user switcher, isn't it? So I'll give label for user switcher, and that's the same text. Now you have to take and add an ID attribute with the same value. That's how they are connected. Label for user switcher. Which one is user switcher? This is the user switcher. That's how you should read. Okay. Now we have everything set up. Now it's time to add few classes so that it looks at least better. So for this div, let's go ahead with the flex layout. So you have added a flex layout, flex column, and when you shrink it, basically the label and the select box come one after another. When there is a white screen, the label and the select box come one beside another. That's what we have done. For the label also, let's add some class like semi bold, giving some margin, those kind of things. For select box, I think the class that we can add is like we can add a border, we can add some padding and can give a rounded corner. So I think this much should be enough. So we had a heading, and below that now we have a user switcher, member view, admin view, member view and admin view. I can even select from this. Okay. So we have the header, we have the switcher. Now the next thing that we'll be doing, we'll be adding a section over here for this add book section. So like a book entry form that only admin will be able to see once we start putting our JavaScript code. But first, as we are doing the HTML, let's put the HTML stuff. Let's put some comment so that we don't lose it as our UI is going to be bigger. Next one will be our book entry form. And let us create a section. Inside this, let us take a subheading and we say add a new book. So this is a place where a new book can be added, of course. And then what are the things that we can actually collect from an admin for adding a new book? Of course, you can take the title, the author, and the genre. These three things should be enough for a book to start with to add, right? And as we are collecting information from the user, what is that HTML tag that we'll be using? By the way, why am I even going to this much basic? Why am I not just copy pasting things and putting for you? The 40th session of 40 days of JavaScript is going to be a mammoth project. Here we will get started with hand coding HTML, hand coding each portion of JavaScript, connecting to database, and all these things we're going to do. Let's have a practice of going through those nitty gritties and understanding those nitty gritties, because when you're going for that bigger project, I might escape few things because I'm actually teaching them here. So when we want to get the input from the user, what is that HTML element that we bank on? The element is definitely something called a form. And inside the form, we usually keep all the required items, okay, like the input elements, the text element, text input elements, radio elements, select box, submit button, all this kind of thing, right? So I have a form now. Let's give an ID to this form so that I can query this form in my JavaScript in future, and also add a very basic class. Okay, inside this form we will care about three fields. One is title, another is author, another is genre, and each of this field will be with their respective label. So I am going to group them inside three divs. First for title, second for author, third for the genre. So let's complete the first one, then we can copy paste and do the second and third. What it will be? First is a label, and we told that whenever we are adding a label, we should be adding a for. So label for title, and then we will have the input box. The type is of course going to be text, and it should have an ID that matches the for attribute value of this label. You can have the attribute called required so that we can make it mandatory that some value has to be added. And I think that's it basically. This particular input is going to be. And the level, let's add title over here. Now the same thing that I'm going to copy paste inside the second div, and for title I will be changing it to author. Same thing I'm going to copy paste over here. Same thing I'm going to tell as author. And again, the same label and input pair I'm going to copy again, going inside the third div, and this time I'll call it as genre, and label for this genre and input is genre. Okay, so I have now three fields. One is title, and there is author, and the third one is genre. Now the last thing that is left over here is like I have to submit after filling up all these details. So I need a button, I need a submit button. So let's add a button as well. Let's call it as add book, and the type of the button will be submit. That's it, my form. I have not added much styles, but let's see without the style itself. Yeah, add a new book. I have a title, I can see the text box, I have an author, I have genre, and I have the add book button. There is no style. Let's add the style and come back again. So let's start with this section, our book entry. Let's add an ID to it in case we have to select it later. Let's give it some distinguished background. Maybe we can give a white background, some padding, rounded corner kind of thing. So let's add. So BG white, P6, rounded, and shadow. If I go to UI, now you should be able to view it. See, it's a rounded white color, because the body one we have given some amount of gray. So on top of that, if you give white, it will stand out, and we have given a shadow, so you're able to see the shadow as well. So let's go ahead and complete the other styles. For the H2, we can use the similar classes of the H1, but H1 was with 3XL. H2 should be smaller than that. So we have made it as XL, rest of it almost same, and given some kind of margin bottom. Okay, for form, we have already added the class. For div, I don't think anything is required. For the label, let's add some class. Okay, medium font. So for all the label, let us add the same class. For all the label, let us add the same class. For input text, as you had seen that there was no border until unless I was selecting to it. So let's add some border into the class, then make it full width, add some padding and a rounded corner, like rounded border we have added. Let's add it for all three input text box. Okay, after adding, now if I go to UI, I should see it much more decent. Yeah, I have title, author, genre properly sketched out, so my UI is coming up. Add book, we can make it better. This particular button, it doesn't look like button at all, so let's go ahead and give it some background color, blue, your choice. I'm giving blue, text is white, some padding and the rounded corner. Now I will see this button will look like a button. Yeah, much better. So I have a form ready through which user can now fill it up, can give some title, can give some author, can give some genre. Click on add. Maybe I can give the cursor as pointer so that I get the hand cursor when I go on top of the button. Okay, so this is done. The next section that we'll be worrying about is called available books. Now the available book section. So let's add a section just like before. In this section, let's add a H2. We'll call it as available books, and then we will add a UL section. We will add a bunch of LI dynamically inside this UL, right? Through DOM manipulation, we can definitely do it. You have done it in the DOM modules, right? Because it required the dynamic behavior. As and when I'll be adding a book, this available book section, this particular UL should be filled with all the book list item. So this is as simple as that. Let's add some classes just like previous section, similar kind of thing. Just like previous H2, let's add some classes. This particular UL though would need an ID, right? Because we will be able to query this UL using an ID, unique ID, and then we'll be able to add some of the LIs, the book list dynamically. That's the reason I'm going to add an ID called book list and added a class. That's it. Very, very simple. Now, what do you know? This available books is done. Now I'm going to copy paste this exact section and just to change this H2 to borrowed books and this particular ID. So I have a new section with an ID called borrowed section and the class H2 same. I'm saying it as borrowed books instead of available books. And this ID I'm saying borrowed list instead of book list, right? Because this is where we'll be listing all the books that a member borrowed. Very simple section. Okay, I think I have missed out to add an ID to this section. I don't know yet whether it will be useful, but let's add it like available section. Okay, if we don't use it, we can come and clean it up later point in time. So now all the sections are ready. We have a section initially for user switcher, then we have the book entry form, then we have the available books, and then we have the borrowed books. Let's see the UI ones. So I have the switcher, I have this one, I have the available books, nothing is added, I have the borrowed books. I think we are set with all the things required in the HTML. Now it's time that we'll start focusing on our scripting part. We have to deal with this. We have to deal with user, we have to deal with books, we have to deal with admin, we have to deal with members, right? All these things together. So I think the first thing that I am interested in doing right now is to create certain models. What is models? Models are nothing but a blueprint based on which I'll be creating different instances. What is blueprint? Nothing but the classes. I'll be creating the classes for user, books, admin, member, establish relationship between them, add their properties, add their methods, but everything I'm going to do keeping JavaScript modules in mind and the import and export. I'm not getting into again what is import, what is export. A lengthy video was given explaining all possible use cases of import, export, and JavaScript modules. I hope you enjoyed that. If not, please catch up with that to continue with the rest of this session. All right, so let's go to VS Code, come back to SRC. Inside SRC folder, let's create a new folder called models. So first thing that I'm interested in creating, which is the first model, is something called book. So let's create a file called book.js. Book.js, create a class called book and then add the keyword export in front of it so that you can export this class from here and somewhere else down the line we'll be able to import this class and can use it. That's the whole funda of modules, isn't it? Break into smaller entities so that you can compose them back using the export import mechanism and can do your job. You can take whatever you needed. You don't need to bloat your JavaScript files with all the other things that you are not requiring. So we are creating the book first. What will be the constructor of the book? What it is going to take? It is going to take title, because those are the three fields. One is author, and then we'll be taking the genre as the input. After taking all this input, what do? We do this dot title equals to title. Very basic thing we have learned in the ES6 class. Again, ES6 class session, I think one of the most engaging session that I would say, where I have actually didn't live out any use cases possible. Whatever I know, whatever I learned over the period of time, I've taught every possible thing. Please look into that. If you have already done through it, great. Let's proceed. So, like title, I have now added author and genre. Let's give each of the book a unique ID. So we'll do this dot id equals to JavaScript has an API called crypto. In that API, there is something called a random UID. This method, if you call that, it is going to create a random unique ID, UID, that you can use to create an ID. Another attribute that I am interested to add to this book, though I am not taking that as an input from the admin while creating the book, that is to track whether this particular book is available to borrow or not. So by default, any book that will be added to the library management system will be available to borrow. So I have created something called is available, an attribute, and assigning that particular attribute with the value true. That means by default, this book is available to borrow. You're with me? Great. Book is done. After book is done, the next thing that I'm going to add is called users, our base class from which we'll be creating the members and the admins. So let's go ahead, add a new file. Let's create user.js file. Will be a very simple class called user. And of course, we are going to export this just like before. What are you doing? Are you doing a named export here or default export? What do you think? Right? You have learned from the module session, isn't it? Now, a user can have a name and an email. Okay. Let's consider that. We can add many other attributes also, phone number and etc. Up to you. So this dot name equals to name, this dot email equals to email, so that its properties got added. Now, did we say that admin and members are also user? That means they'll be extended from this user class and they will have their unique role. So can we use the fundamental of polymorphism along with the fundamental of inheritance over here? How? Like this. Can I create a method called getRole over here, and this method getRole for user can return something called a user. Whenever I will extend this user and create an admin, I can override this getRole method to return admin or administrator over here, so that I know every instance I create of an administrator, if I call the dot get role function, it will always return me admin. It is never going to return me user, because I'll be overriding it. That's what is called polymorphism. From the object oriented programming principle, if you're coming, I have given an example of running, right? Running a company, running for exercise. For different contexts, it's behave differently. That's what is polymorphism. Here, get role will behave differently for the different context. That's what we're going to see. So this is our user class. After user class, let's create the admin. So we'll go ahead, new file, and do admin.js. So admin is a class now that will extends from user. But where is the user coming from? User is a class in the user.js file and it is exported from here. That means I can now come over here and do an import of user from the .user.js file, isn't it? Why am I keeping this inside this curly braces? Because I am doing a named export. I'm not doing a default export of user from here. For default export, I would have used the default keyword. I have not done it. So it's a named export. To import it, you have to use the curly braces. Good. Now I can access the user class in this admin file. So it means I can now put the user over here and now can do a lot of stuff. The first thing that I'll be doing, I won't be defining again this dot name, this dot email, because user has already defined those, this dot name, this dot email. The only thing that I can easily do, I can have the constructor over here which can take again name and email, and I can just call super, pass the name and email. That's it, right? That's how we have learned in the inheritance concept. And then I can use the polymorphism, the get role method that is my parent or the base class is having. But I am now giving my own implementation saying that for admin, return the role as admin, where for user, it was just user. Isn't it awesome? So I have now created an admin class, extending the user class, having the name and email from the base class properties, but setting the new values for those properties, and then with polymorphism overridden the role, the get role, which is for user, for admin it is admin, for member it will be member. Now let's go ahead and create our fourth model, or the fourth blueprint, the fourth class is called member.js. Of course, member also need to be extended from user. So I closing import user from user.js file. Then what we'll do, we will do a class member extends user, similar constructor that we had it in the admin. I'm just going to copy this from here so that I don't have to write too much of code. Same constructor, name and email, and you have super name and email. I will also override get role, and here I'll return member. Okay, good enough. I think now you understand admin and member well. Okay, this also let's export because we might have to import it somewhere. This also let's export because may have to import it somewhere. Member can do a few specialized functions. For example, a member can borrow a book. Okay, member can borrow a book. What is the functionality for borrow book? I'm not writing now, just right now giving a definition. Provided a book is passed to this particular borrow book function, member will be able to borrow the book. Similarly, a member can return a book, correct now? So that means if I give a book or maybe a book ID, a member should be able to return that. Clear enough? We'll be adding all these functionalities slowly, right? So far I have created all the entities, all the models, all the classes, everything looks fantastic. Now next thing what we have to think about is how are you going to attach thing from this index.html file, all this HTML that we have written, to all these entities, how we'll make use of them so that the functionalities can be built. So far a skeleton is built. Let's go back to HTML again. First, let's implement what will happen when user switching between this member view and admin view. The switcher has two options. One is member view, one is admin view. In case of admin view, we decided to keep the form, right? Which form? This book entry form. So it means that only for that view, we have to take this book entry form, this particular section, and show only this section. Of course, we also have to show the available book section as well, because admin also want to see what are the available books. But for member, we will be able to show the available book section and the borrowed book section. We won't be showing this book section where the form present for creating new books. So let's do those changes. So for that, we have to get this switcher. The switcher is nothing but this user switcher, this select box, and based on this value, we have to do certain conditions. So for that purpose, let us go to main.js file, because main.js file is already attached in index.html file. You can see over here, it is there. So main.js file, I'm going to remove this console.log, const user switcher equals to document dot get element by id. The id of the select box is the user switcher, so we got it inside this variable. Now on the user switcher, we can add a event listener. What kind of event we are talking about here is the change event, because in a select box you can change from one option to another option, and when the change event happen, on that time we can do getting this event, the function, basically what to happen when you change from one type of user to another type of user. First of all, you have to get the value, whether the value is for member or for the admin. That we can do using const selected. Let's take a variable. We have the event object. From this we get the target, and from this we get the value. We have learned all this in our event session. So e.target.value is going to give me the selected value. Now here we have something to learn. If selected is an admin, we have to show hide few things. Great. But if selected is member, we have to again show hide something. Think if you had the user interface for your admin to log in, for your member to log in, admin or member would have logged in using certain credentials like their name and email ID maybe, or email ID or password maybe. For our use case, we have created admin and member from users, and the properties they have is only name and email. If you're creating admin or a member, the name and email is enough. That means we can mimic the user that is right now taking action on this UI, whether admin or a member, based on this particular selection. We can create something like a current user, and we can say that this current user equals to if selected is admin. That means if admin value is selected from that select box, in that case, we can create a new admin instance. New admin instance means a new admin user, right? So for that purpose, to create a new admin user, we have to import admin from models.admin.js file. And now I can do a new admin. And what admin takes? Admin takes name and email. So let's create it. Let's create it with a name called Alice and maybe an email like alice@email.com. So if it is admin, we're definitely going to create an admin instance and going to return this from here. But if it is a member, in that case, similarly, we can now create a member instance. For that, we'll be importing the member from models member.js file. And here we'll be doing new member, and let's pass the member name. Let's take it John Doe and email as john@email.com. You're getting the point. We don't have an UI for member registration, member login, admin registration, admin login. We're hard coding it. But even if you're hard coding it, we are laying the foundation that if an admin is selected for the view, we are going to work with the current user, and the current user is our hard-coded admin. If it is a member, current user is our hard-coded member. But still, we have made the differentiation. This current user, we can use later point in time to check, okay, who is the current user, and based on that, we can actually take the call. Everywhere, we don't have to actually pass this value. We don't have to really pass this value. We don't have to really check this value everywhere in our code, whether it's an admin or non-admin. I have something called current user now. With current user itself, I can know now whether the current user is an admin or it's a member. We will see that. Okay, next thing I told, like if it is admin, the book form will be shown. The borrow section is not required, so it won't be shown. So we can do something like, it means the book form is inside this book section, right? So I'm going to take this, I'm going to copy this one, going back to main.js file. Over here, we'll do const book section equals to document dot get element by ID, and then pass book section. Okay. Now for book section, if it is admin, we are going to show. So we'll say book section dot style dot display. We can do if selected is admin. In that case, let's show it. In other case, let's hide it. So display block means we'll show, display none means we will be hiding it. So now if I select admin, only in that case, the book section where the form is there will be shown. If I select member, it will be hidden. Let's see that. As we are seeing, for the admin view, book section where this form is there is shown. If I now change to member view, that particular form is gone, right? Admin view, it is shown. Member view, it is gone. But there is a bug. There is a potential bug. This is where I'm also introducing for you to kind of face the issues, face the bugs, and how to solve the bugs. If I refresh this, what is happening? My default view is member view. But for member view, this particular form should not be shown. But I'm seeing it is showing. If I change it to admin view, it's fine. It should be shown. If I change it to member view, it won't be shown. This is correct. But by default, when I'm coming first time to this application, for member view also this form is shown. I have to fix that, isn't it? So let's fix that first. So to fix that, for initial rendering, we can take this book section dot style dot display and can set it to none because initially member is selected, so we don't want to show it. Okay. Another thing we can do, this current user, we can actually initialize, instead of initializing with the null, we can initialize with this John Doe itself, the member itself, because member is the option that is selected in the select box. All right, so let's go ahead and test it out once. Refresh. See, member view. Now the form is no more shown. We have only available books and the borrowed books the way that we wanted. If I go to admin view, I have the form now. I have the available books, but I don't want borrowed books to be here as per our initial UX discussion. So the same thing. Now you know how to do it. If you want to pause the video and do it by yourself, please do it. That will be really great. But let me also show you. Coming to index.html file, the borrowed section ID is borrowed section. This is the value. So I'll go to main.js, just like the book section. I'm going to create something called const borrowed section equals to document dot get element by ID, pass the borrowed section over here, and then similar kind of code that I'll be doing over here, like how I have done for the book section. So borrow section dot style dot display, and here I'll be saying if the selected value is a member, only in that case you make it as block, otherwise you make it as none. Good enough? So let's go back to UI and see whether this reflects or not. So I'm in the member view, I'm seeing available books and the borrowed books. Excellent. If I'm going to admin view, now I see only the form and the available books. So my initial condition based on this one is now sorted. If it is admin view, I'm seeing only these two. If I change the view, I'm seeing only these two. That's what it is. Next, we want to take care of this form. We will be doing the add a new book functionality. So we have the form over here. It has an ID called book form. So first thing that I'm going to do is coming here to const book form equals to document dot get element by ID, and then pass the book form. So I have the book form. In book form, we had added a submit button, isn't it? So it means that if that button is getting clicked, the form will be submitted. So we can now use the book form, add a event listener, and what kind of event that we are interested to handle here is called submit event, correct? Because it's a form. Similar kind of thing, I need a event handler. For that, I'll get an event, and inside this I can write everything that should happen after the form is being submitted. Now form, if I go there, having title with ID title, author with ID author, genre with ID genre. So it means that if I do document.getElement by ID title, I'll get this input. On top of that, if I do dot value, I'll get the value of the title that user must have put inside this input box. So I can write like document.getElement by ID, passing the title. Off of that, if I do dot value, I get the title. Now, one more thing, when you submit a form, the intention of the form is to send certain data to the backend that you are capturing through the form. Along with that, the default behavior of the form is to refresh the page. Now, you don't want that to happen, right? You don't want the page to be refreshed. Rather, instead of refreshing the page, you want to handle the title, author, genre, all these things by yourself. So for that matter, if you don't want the page to be refreshed, you can prevent it using e.prevent default. I have explained that in details along with the code examples in our event session. Okay. So I hope you got this. Now, as I have title, similarly, I have added author and the genre taken from author and the genre text fields. Now, the best part. We have created a book class, and what a book class is, what are the properties? It has title, author, and genre. Those are the things that you have to pass, which we are already collecting from the text boxes. Internally, I'm also adding an ID. Ideally, I should be adding this ID for admin and members also. So ideally, this one should be at the user level also. Okay, so let's add this. Now, I can import this book class in my main.js, import book, and create an instance of the book, because we are creating the new book only, right, through the form, saying new book, and pass title because it takes title. After title it takes author, and after author it takes genre. What it will return? It will return an instance of a book that I can hold inside a variable called book. So far so good. I have created a book instance. Let me do a console.log of book here and go to the browser, go to the admin view, open up the command prompt. Now let's add some title, say JavaScript, author, let's say James, genre tech. If I do add book, do you see what is happening in the console? I have got this book object over here, and this book object, if I expand, has an author, has the genre that I have given, the ID got created automatically, it's available because we have set it up with true, and the title of it. And ultimately what it is an object, because book is an object we have created from the class. So this book object has been created. Now if you're creating a different book, for example you're creating Python, say author is Jack, this also take, and if I do add book, Now I have a new book instance. Author is Jack, genre is Tick, a completely new ID, title is Python. So right now I have two books that I have created. So what I should do, as and when I'm creating these books, I should list these books under this available book section. That's the next logical thing that I want to do. Now, two ways that you can think of doing it. One way, you have this book object, you pass this book object to some methods, and in that methods, you directly populate the DOM, right? For example, available books is there in the DOM. If I do inspect, I can get this UL. Inside this UL, I can add each of this book every time. But here, I don't want to do that directly. I want to share a practice with you. I want to bring the concept of services over here. I want to explain to you like why you should think about having services than directly passing the model data, the instance data from one function to another function. Services brings reusability. Services brings the concept of having things in one place so that it can be used as a source of truth. So in this case, how can we create a service and what are the things that we can keep inside the service so that that can be reused across functions, across functionalities. For example, if I add a book, I should have a service method that will allow me to add this book information into a collection, maybe inside an array. I should have another service which will give me all available books. If I call that all available book service from anywhere in the UI, that will give me all the available books. In our case, we can call it from this section and it can actually list out everything. So the purpose of the services would be reusability and keeping things in one place so that from multiple other places you can call them. Can you create a library service? Let's do that. Let us now create a folder called services inside SRC. So let's create new folder, services, and let's create a file called library service.js. Let's create a class called library service, or you can call it as library system, whatever we want. And definitely we want to export this one because we want to use it elsewhere. Okay. Now, library should have books. So we will create books as the property. And the pound sign before the books conveys that books is a private property. No one should access the books and set something to it directly. Then we'll have a constructor function and we can do this dot here. Let us initialize this books with an empty array. So whenever the library system get instantiated, we have a books array which is empty. Now in the system, there are a few things that we can do. We can preserve this book, then we can create a collection of the book. So whenever a new book gets added through that form, we want to add that new book to this particular books collection. Okay. So for that purpose, let's add a method called add book, which will take a book and it will do this dot books dot. It's an array, so you can actually push this book inside it. If you want to write a functionality for deleting a book or removing a book, that also we can do, right? We can take the book ID and from this books array, we can remove the book. Then there is a section in the UI where we might need what are the books that are available and all the books also, right? So this will return on books. I can do a filter, find each of the book, and for the book, if is available is true. Here by mistake 2 dots, it should be 1 dot. Okay. So it means that each of the book is available as a field. When the book gets borrowed, we will turn this is available to false, but by default it is true. Now we can say a book is available from the collection of books only if the is available is true for a book. So we have done a filtering based on this particular field, book.is available. If it is true, for whatever the books, those books are available. And the last one we can have as get all books. What this can do, this can simply return this dot pound sign books, basically all the books. Now these are the methods we definitely need from a library system to work with. Immediately where we can make use of. We can make use of it in the main.js for the add book because we have now a book object created. We have tested it out with console.log. It works perfectly. So now if I import the library system and then if I instantiate it const library equals to new library system. So I can do now library dot add book. You see this? This is how you incrementally build your software, right? You don't haphazardly pass things and do things. The whole advantage right now, wherever in the entire application, I need to add a new book. to my library, I'll just call this method and pass the book. So the basic skeleton should be really, really solid. The base and the foundation should be really, really solid so that you can build on top of this very, very easily. Every time I fill up this form and submit, a new book gets added. Any point in time, if I call library.getAllBooks, all the books that have got added using this add book function can be listed out. And that is what exactly we are going to do immediately. How? The moment a new books get added, we want to render that book. So we'll do render books function. We will write it. Also, after the form gets submitted, the same form, book form, we want to do a reset so that all the things whatever you have typed inside the form that gets cleared up. Okay, so now render books is what we are going to write. So let's do function render books. Job of render books is to list down all the books in the available book section. Let's implement that. So what is this available book section? Index.html file, we have this available book section, and here we have an ID called available section. Also the UL over here is having an ID called book list. So it means that if I have the list of all the books which we have from the library system, get available books, get all books, all this method we have written. So get all books will give me the collection of all the books that we have added. Now that's a collection, that's an array. I can iterate through it. I can create li list element and then can add that li inside this UL. So for that purpose, I have to first access this one in my main.js file. So I'll go up and over here, I'll say const book list equals to document dot get element by ID, pass the book list, rocking. So I have the book list now. Now the render method is where I have to do the things. First thing, in the book list, every time the render method gets called, render books method gets called, I want to clean up all the current entry. So I will clean up with the .inner HTML equals to empty string. Then library that I have now, my service having a method called get all books. This is the whole purpose that we have added that. That particular method, if I go once more, this access the same books property in which we have added. It access the same books property and return in which we have added new books previously. This and this are exactly same, right? So if I do get all books, I'm going to get this array itself, which I had instantiated already, in which I have added the book. If no books are added, it's going to give me the empty array. So over here, now library.getAllBooks is going to give me an array. I can do a for each on this particular array. And then for each of the book I get, I can now start thinking of creating LIs. Okay. So let's create an LI list item equals to document dot create element of li. You can give capitalized li or the small li, both works. Now I can do li dot inner html equals to, here let's add some markup. Let's add a div. Inside this div we can say strong, it will bold it, right? First let's get book for each of the books from here dot title in the strong, then we'll say by books author, and then in the parenthesis let's print the book genre. Okay, this one, the genre one, to show it little differently, I can keep it inside the em tag. Okay, so for each of the li, I'm creating one li. For each of the li, I am adding one of the book details, and then I have this book list right over here. I can do book list after this line dot append child. We have learned all this thing from the DOM session already. I'll do this li. Now this should start listing out each time I'm going to add a book to the section, right? All right, let's test it. Let's go to admin view. Let's add a book, JavaScript. Let's add tapaScript. We'll add a JavaScript book very soon. On technology genre, let's add book. Wow. So I see JavaScript by tapaScript on technology genre got added. Now the beauty of this one, this is available books we are showing for members also, isn't it? Now if I go to members view, see what happened. I can still see the book that I have added. So as a member now, if I have a button here to borrow this book, I can click on that button. This book will be borrowed and will be coming over here. Now if this book is coming over here on the available book section, I have to show, right, if this book is borrowed or not. or I have to hide this book, something like that I should do, so that next member should not come and again borrow it. So every time I have a book list, whether it's in the admin view or the member view, I have to do something about it. Member view, I have to add a borrow button over here because member can borrow a book. In the admin view, I can add whether this particular book is already been borrowed or not. Correct? How can I do that? I can do it very well because book is having an attribute called is available. If the books is available is true, I can add an available over here. Otherwise, I can say borrowed. The code for this is pretty simple. Let's do it. Let's do it very, very quickly. So before I add this li-html, or after this also you can do, doesn't matter. Here we can do the logic, and this is where you will appreciate that you had created that current user. If current user you have created, and remember for the user there is a method called get role. If the current user is a member, now this is again another practice that you guys need to remember always. I am not relying on a particular value from UI. I am not relying on the switcher option value, whether it's an admin or member. Rather, I am relying on the value on my data structure or the data set or my object or the instances, because those object and instances way of managing things in your program is much worthy than doing it through the UI element. UI element tomorrow might change. From the select box, it might become a radio box. But still, the radio box you select a member versus an admin. Ultimately, in your user object, it will be a role, and that role should say that what you need to do, not the selected value from the UI. If you try to use the selected value from the UI everywhere in the code, tomorrow if the UI control changes, you have to refactor your code everywhere. But if you just use it once to read it for the first time or whenever it changes and populate that to your own object, you can use that object everywhere because that's not going to change. Got the point? This is the difference. This is how you should be thinking about coding. That's the whole reason. Previously, when the switcher got changed, we had populated a current user, whether the user is an admin or a member. Now I'll be using this current user's role everywhere to determine whether admin centric or the user or the member centric thing that we have to do. So if it is a member, we can write a code. Get role is of course a function, and if this particular book is available, in that case, okay, let us put this up because we need to add something to this inner HTML based on this condition. So let's put this logic over here and create a variable called controls. We'll come to know what it is for. In the first condition, if it is a member and if the book is available, that means I can borrow this book. So I can say controls equals to, I will add a button and I will say borrow. Let's end this button over here. Else, if the current user dot get role, I'm going to copy it, equals to an admin. In that case, we decided to say the controls will be different, and it is just going to tell in a span, let me end this span, that if book dot is available, if it is true, in that case I'll say the book is available, else it is borrowed, and then end this. You get the point? So for a member, if the book is available, we are asking the member to borrow that book, clicking on this button. If it is an admin, we are just showing if the book is available, then showing available, otherwise we are showing borrowed. Okay. Now this controls will be populated with the HTML element depending on this condition. So in our HTML that we have written, after this div, let us add $controls. That's it. Now this condition, we'll be able to see it on the UI. Let us see this. Let's go to admin view. Let's add a book, JS, TS, tech, add. You're seeing this? JS by TS in the tech genre is available because nobody has borrowed it. But if I go to my member view, I see this is not changing. This is supposed to be borrow, right? The button borrow. It is still saying available. Why? So this is again, probably you're thinking it's a bug. I will take it as that this is a feature that we have not implemented. This particular change that we are trying to see, in this case available, and in this case it should be borrow button. So this means this portion, this render books functionality has to be called for each of these view changes so that it can fetch the data accordingly. What I'm trying to say here is if I go back to the code for a moment, this render books is getting called when? The render books is getting called only place today whenever we are submitting this form submit. But this rendered books should also be called whenever you are selecting between your admin and the member. Here also, this one should get called because unless this get called, you don't have any other way that inside render books you can tell that current user is now changed to member. Correct, na? Once you call this one, before this only you have changed the current user to member with the switch. Now current user is member and the book is available. Now you should be able to see borrow. If you change from member to admin again this will be get called. Current user will be admin. So this if block won't be executed. I'll go to else if and then it will show available versus borrow. Correct? This is how you build also incrementally. I'm doing it very slow. I'm doing it like a grassroots level because for many of the beginners it is difficult to understand how do we build logic, how do we build like a Lego box one by one. This is how you build. You build one functionality, other portion of the functionality was not working, you came and you fix it just by adding one line without doing too much of code, because this is how you build it incrementally. Okay, so let's go back, let's go to admin view, let's again add js ts tech add book. In this case it will say available or not available, available or borrowed. But if I go to member view now, do you see this is a borrow button? It doesn't look like a button, but it's a button. If I go and inspect it, yes, it's a button. Now what I'm going to do, I'm going to add few styles to make it look a little bit better. So let's go ahead. Once we have created the li, let us add few classes, adding a background white, some padding, some kind of rounded border, shadow, all these things basically. And then in this button also, let us add a few classes so that it looks like a button. We have added a green color background, text white. And I spoke about data action and data ID in our DOM classes a lot because that is the way you can pass certain values dynamically when certain action happens. So while defining the button itself, if I give the data ID is this particular book's ID, when someone clicks this button, I can actually pass this dynamic book ID to the action to do something about it. What we'll do in this case, we'll be borrowing the book. That means we'll be removing that book from the is available list, and that is the action that I have to perform. Now, to identify that book, I need the book ID. How can I pass the book ID from here? This is one way of doing it. This is where data action and data ID comes very handy. We're going to see that in a while. Then for the span, let's add a class. It will be a small text. So now let's go ahead and test out this once more. Let's go to admin view. Let's add JavaScript by tapaScript. It's a tech book, ad book. Do you see available over here? Much better. There's a flex layout. They have placed themselves in layout the way that we have given. Let's add another thing. How to be happy. Author, let's say tapas. I am never going to write that. And genre, let's say, what do you say? Lifestyle. Okay. And add this book. See, now two books got added. Both are available. Now, if I go to member view, I can see both the books with my borrow button. If I click on this borrow button, this book should go out of this available list, should sit inside the borrowed book section. And if an admin is seeing it on that time, it should say borrowed. That code we have already done. This is how I like coding. This is the reason that I like coding. The kick of building things step by step. We have already coded this one. So only thing that we have to do, just writing one function. That one function is for borrowing a book. The moment I click on it, it should borrow this book means turn the is available true to false, and that's it. And then add that available books list over here. How do we get available books list? Do you remember that in our library service, we have already written this? This is the beauty of it. Correct? So let's do this very quickly. I'm sure the question will be, how do we get a click handler on these borrow buttons? Do I need to add click handler on one by one on each of these borrow button? Or can I do something which is more dynamic? Again, I'm probably repeating it 1,000 times that I have taught you each of these things with projects and example in the respective modules. When we did DOM, the DOM module, I have taught you all these things. The same philosophy I'm going to use. So if you are following 40 days of JavaScript, these are really going to be cakewalk for you, right? So let's go ahead and learn it, even in case you have missed it. In index.html, we have a available book section and we have a UL called book list. Inside this book list, we have added each of the available books. And the beside available books, we have a button. Let's see this as a structure from our UI. If I just do inspect, I will find this UL called book list. Inside this book list, I have li. inside each of the li I have a button, and this button is having something called a data action called borrow, and then there is a data id which says the actual id of this book. For the next one, the id will be different. You understand the structure. Now, to make use of this, coming to main.js file, we have this book list, right? We just now have seen book list, and the same book list in the main.js file we have already defined. So coming here, I can now do a add event listener, and the listener that I am actually interested in is called click. Do you guys remember event bubbling and all these things that we have learned together? So here I have to do a event handler, and over here I have to handle this event. Now this click handler I am adding in the UL level. Inside that there is li. Each of the li is having the button. Now here what I can do, if e dot target dot tag name, the power of event bubbling is button. If you find a button, because event will bubble, in that bubbling mechanism, if you find a button, in that case, let's do something. So now I have attached only one click handler in the outer element. Let the event to bubble. While bubbling, if it finds a button, it will halt there, go inside this if block, and here I'll be checking, hey button, do you have a data ID? What is your action? Is your action is borrow? If you have a data ID and if your action is borrow, let me do something. That's my logic, right? And it's getting possible because of the event bubbling mechanism that you have learned before. Okay. Now what we can do, very simple. First, const get the ID. This is a book ID from this particular event, means it's a button. From this particular event target is a button. If you do get attribute, pass the data hyphen ID, whatever the value you have set, that will get. Same thing is for the action also. Okay. So if I do action on the target, if I do get attribute, I get the data action. Now going to library service, do I have a method called get book by ID? I have not defined, but that will be a very simple method to do, right? I can now add get book by ID. And this is, again, I want to tell you guys that not everything you will be able to visualize and think in the beginning. There will be time where you have to add things as you go and as the requirement comes up. So here I can do return this dot my private books dot find for each of the book if b dot id matches the ID I'm passing from outside. So if I now call the library.getBookById, passing a book ID over here, this is going to return me a book instance if the ID matches. If nothing matches, it's going to return me a null. All right, so get book by ID, I'm going to call now. I'm going to go back to main.js wherever I was. So I have a library instance already. I have created it before, library dot get book by ID. The more you code with me, the more you enjoy. If you're just watching, I don't think it's of much use. Please start coding with me, pause it, code with me, give that time. So this will return me a book. Now I have a book and I have the action. Now the beauty of it is, if the action equals to borrow, where did I set this action borrow? I have set this action over here. Data action is borrow. So whenever somebody click on this borrow, I'll get this action using get attribute. So this will be borrow. If it is borrow and I have the current user, another beautiful thing that I have set up, on that I have something called get role, which is a method. If this guy is a member and if book is available, in this case, I can borrow it because only a member can borrow an available book. So in that case, what I'll say, user dot borrow book. We had created a method but kept it empty. We are going to add functionality to this one and pass the book to it. And after you do this, the next thing that you are going to do is you are going to render the books once again. Okay. Now borrow book, we have to implement it because we have not implemented this functionality. Let's go ahead and start implementing this one. This is pretty empty. To implement the borrow book, now let me use the power of the collection called WeakMap. It is just the previous day, previous session where we learned WeakMap, isn't it? The WeakMap is a data structure that is created so that it allows your object to be garbage collected as and when or as easily they are available. Now what we can do is, like all the borrowed book, we can create in a map, something called a borrowed map. What kind of thing can go inside the map? The borrowed map can go like which member has borrowed what books. And also while doing that, what I can do, I can add the books that they have borrowed into the browser's local storage, so that even if you go out of the application, come back later point in time, you should be able to get those books back and can show that, right? Those functionalities can be done together. So let's see on the borrow book section. Now to do that, let us create a weak map. Now again, without weak map also you can solve this problem. The complexity that I'm bringing, because it can be use case for this particular weak map, like once a book is borrowed but it is returned, you don't have to again maintain that particular book's object in a map. But at any point in time, you want to know this particular member, how many books they have borrowed, right? So as long as you want to know this particular members, how many books that particular member has borrowed, you have to keep that in a map kind of collection. But the moment the book is returned or the member has logged out, you don't have to really keep the objects inside the data collection of the map. That's why the weak map come into picture. So let us create a borrowed map, and we'll initialize it with weak map. And we told that we'll be also using a local storage. If you know, local storage is a browser storage where you can create and keep certain data, so that you can come back later point in time and you can still retrieve the same data and make your application working with that data. So on otherwise on refresh, whenever I'm adding a book, I'm clicking on refresh, the book is kind of going off, right? So I can retain all these things, right? So for that purpose, what we'll do, like whenever we are getting a member object ready, that means a constructor is getting called, we'll first check whether anything is there in the local storage for this member. Any kind of books are there in the local storage. If there is a book in the local storage, we will retrieve that book and we'll keep it inside the borrowed map, so that this map will be alive as long as we are in the session. If we close the browser, of course the map gone. If member logs out, of course the map gone. But in the local storage, still the information will be there, so that every time the UI comes up, I can repopulate this map once again. Okay, that's the purpose. So to know whether my borrowed books are there in the storage or not, I can do like const borrowed from storage equals to json dot parse. I'll get local storage because we are dealing with browser window object by default having local storage. On top of that, you can have a method called get item, and here you have to pass a key. This key can be anything, but let it be something meaningful like borrowed books. If by this key in the local storage the item is found, it is great. If it doesn't found, let's return an empty array. Okay, so this is my borrowed from storage. So when we set to local storage, that time we'll call local storage.set items. We'll pass this key, and for this key we will pass the book list over there. Okay, and then after this we have this map, isn't it? And on this map we can call the set method. The member, what is the member? I can proudly pass this, isn't it? Because when I'm creating the member instance using new member, the this reflect to the particular instance that is getting created, right? On which I'll be calling borrowed books, on which I'll be calling return books, on which I'll be calling get role. This is where this will be referred to, right? We have learned this in the object session. We have learned this in the ES6 class session, that how this works, right? In this case also, it is same. So for this particular member, this is the book that I am going to manage inside the map. Okay, now coming to the borrowed book. So whenever this member object gets created, first look into the local storage. If there is a books collection for this member, put this collection for this particular member inside this map. Okay, so if I have to any point in time find out what are the books this particular member own or the borrowed, I can do it very well using the borrowed map dot get and just pass this. Again, think about the case when the member instance has got created using new member and we have called the borrowed book. This resolved to that particular instance on which we are calling the borrowed book, right? That is always we know. So that means this is going to give me all the books that got borrowed. JavaScript is not at all confusing if you know the fundamentals. If you don't know the fundamentals, it is very, very confusing for you. And this borrowed book is what? It's going to be a collection, basically an array, right? Either an empty array if nothing is stored in the local storage, or an array that we have already stored in the local storage. We are going to see that. So inside this borrowed, now I can push my new book. Why? Let's say I have already borrowed two books. Now this is the third book I'm going to borrow. So this borrow book function is getting called. So this particular third book I am now putting inside the same collection where those two books are already available. And of course, I am going to do book dot is available equals to false because this book is borrowed, it's no more available. And finally, I can do local storage dot set item. And this is where you have to take up the same key and put the updated list over here. But before you put that, you have to make sure you do json.stringify because local storage doesn't allow an object to be put directly. You have to stringify it to change it as a string, and then you have to put it. All good now? So it means now my book will go to local storage, and book also turn is available to false. That means book is not available. That means borrowed books, which can return my map, borrowed map dot get, and this. Correct? This is the same thing we have used over here also. To get all the books any point of time owned by a particular member is borrowed map dot get, pass this, it will give me all the books that got borrowed. And in that only I had added the new book. So now think of a situation, somebody borrowed two books. That time if you call get borrowed books on the member, it is going to give you those two books information. Now if you had added one more book, again if you call get borrowed books, this is going to give you the three book information. Now borrow book is done. Let's go back to main.js file. Here this is done, render book is done. We should be able to test it out a little bit. Let's go back to our library management system, and now I am going to go to the application tab. After going to application tab, I'll be clicking on this 3002. Let me zoom out a little bit. Let's do everything from the beginning. Let's go to admin view. Let's add JS TS tech. Notice if anything comes over here or not at the right side. Now I'll do add book. The books got added over here. Nothing happened. Nothing really happened till now. Book is available. Great. Now I go to member view, and all the implementation I have done so far is for borrowing the book. So I'm going to click on borrow. The moment I click on borrow, nothing happened because I got an error. Let's see to console. Let's debug. Okay, cannot set property tag name of hash element which has only a getter. Okay, you know what is the error? Instead of triple equals, I have given single equal under main.js file. Yeah, this is bad, right? I have to do the comparison. Okay, it was trying to assign. So that was a mistake. Okay, so let's go ahead and do it again. Let's go to admin view. Let's add JS TS tech. Let's do add book. It's available. Let's go to member view. Let's click on borrow. I had put a debug point before just to understand what is the mistake I have done, because I'm clicking on this borrow and something was not happening. So I was suspecting that in the book list itself for this button, some code would have gone broken. This is I'm saying because this is how your debugging mentality also should be. In the next session, we are going to talk about some of the real world debugging problem. We will go much more detail over there, but this is how it is. Anytime you face a problem, please come to the source tab. Try to think about where the error could be. Near to that, put a debug point, and then you start debugging from it. How to do the debugging? We already had a session before. Now I will just go from here with Fn F8. Now I have clicked on borrow. Now if I go to application tab, it's actually not doing anything. I was thinking that in the local storage it's going to add certain entry over here, but it's not doing. No problem. It's our opportunity to do one more debugging, isn't it? So let's go ahead, put a debug point over here. Now let's click on borrow. Now if I select this e.target.tag name, I am seeing this tag name is in capital BUTTON, but what I'm equating with is small BUTTON. Believe me, I have not made all this scenario. I'm making this mistake while coding, and that is why I'm very happy that I'm able to show you. So the fix will be, if I want to do a triple equals, means strict equality operator, e.target.tag name is expected to be capital button. So we should be giving a capital button over here, not the smaller button. Because as you've given smaller button, if I do F10, it is not going to go inside this if. If it is not going to go inside this if, it is not going to call this borrow book at all, which is adding the things into the local storage, isn't it? All right, so I understand what was the mistake. Let's go ahead and fix it in our code. So instead of small button, it should be a capital button. Okay. Now let's go back. Okay, it's reflecting over here. I'm going to take out this debug button thinking that, okay, at least this time things will work. Let's go to admin. Let's add JS, Jack, tech, and let's do add book. Book has got added. Let's go to member view. Let's click on borrow. we have clicked on borrow, something happened over here, something really happened. But only thing that I'm looking for is going to application, coming to localhost 3000 to see whether there's an entry or not. Yes, if I click on it, I see, man, this is good. This particular book has got added to the local storage. So any point in time now, if I am able to read from this local storage and put that entry to this borrowed books, this value will be always retained, right? That is true or not? That is the power of it. This is a great thing. So this is cool. This is really, really cool. But what didn't happen? When I have clicked on this borrow, I want over here, it should come and sit inside the borrowed books because somebody has borrowed this book. And once it is sitting inside the borrowed books, it should have a return button so that clicking on return, it should go back to the available books. That's coming next. So first, we are going to now do render borrowed functionality, where we'll be rendering all the borrowed books with all the books that user is borrowing, member is borrowing, along with a return button. Let's do that. Now we have to think about populating this borrow section, this particular UL, isn't it? So that all the books that are taken is not available, are borrowed, that I have to bring it over here. Let's do that. Going to main.js file, just like render books, let us now create another function called render borrowed. We are going to do the borrowed section. There also we have a UL, and that UL is borrowed list. So I'm going to copy this guy. I'm going to come over at the top, just like book list. I'm going to create a new entry now, but I'll be calling it as borrowed list. This is great. Now taking this borrowed list inside the render borrowed, first thing is I'll clear it all the time, because whenever the render borrowed calls, I want to clear it and I want to check that this is great. I have decided that admin should not borrow. So if my current user dot get role is not a member, in that case I don't want to process it. Correct? For admin, I don't want to process it. Then let's get the borrowed books. Const borrowed books equals to, I have the current user. On current user itself, especially on the members, I have a function called get borrowed books. Yes, this is the one. So I'm going to call this one. And this particular method is not there in admin, and for admin this line won't be executed also because we have posted a safeguard. Now I got the borrowed books. I can do borrowed books dot for each. For each of the book in the for each, I can create an li element. I can add some style like before to this li element using this Tailwind CSS classes. Pretty simple, pretty repetitive, so I'm not again explaining. And then add this particular book title and the author in the inner HTML along with a button to return the book. Exactly same concept, so I'm not again hand coding it, just explaining that. What we have done over here is in the inner HTML, now I am adding the book's title which has been borrowed. This book is coming from this for each, you already know that, and that author. And below we are adding a button again with the data ID as book ID, but this time the action will be return. If somebody click on it, it should return a book. Correct? That's all. And the last thing is we have this borrowed list. So on this, I'm just going to do an append child and add this li. So now for each of the borrowed book inside that UL, the list of books will come. Fair enough. Now, what are the places I should be calling this render borrowed? The one place we have done with the book list. Oh, definitely over here, whenever somebody is borrowing a book, we have to render the borrowed also. These two function we can even call in the initial render when first time something is getting loaded. With switcher, we are calling the render books. Let's call render borrowed as well over here. I think that's all. Now we can test it out. All right, so let's test thing out. I am very excited. Member view, there's no books. I'll go to admin view. Let's add a book called JavaScript by tapaScript tech. Add this book. We have added the book. Book is available. Another book, how to be happy, author someone, genre or lifestyle. Add the book. Both the books are added. Let's go to member view. Both the books are there. Let's borrow how to be happy. Everyone wants to know. The moment I click borrow, you see this is got over here. This guy is got over here. Okay, this book is borrowed already. You cannot borrow it over here. I'm not taking out the entire one because to let the user know that this book was available, but now this book is not borrowed. But if I go to admin view, for the borrowed books, it is showing borrowed. And for the available books, it is showing available. So admin can now see this book is available, this book is borrowed. Maybe I need to get one more copy of this one. Now, if I go to member view, this is a borrowed book. If I refresh also, if I refresh how many times ever, I will still see this one over here. This one has got because I'm not caching it. I'm just caching the borrowed book, if you remember, in the local storage. So that is why it is still there. If I cache all available books, that also will be there. Cache means adding it to the local storage and taking from there, not the browser cache as such. So this is how it is done. Isn't this awesome? The end-to-end thing that we have worked upon. Now the task for you. The tasks that I'm giving to you are few. You have to implement the return book functionality. Just go opposite of borrow. Return book inside the member is already empty, the particular method. You have to fill it up. I have already created the map and everything. You have to write some JavaScript logic to make the return thing happen. The way that we have done the borrowed one, the button functionality, similarly, you have to do it for the return as well. This is one thing. And the second thing that I want you to do is there are certain cases you can make the code little bit better. For example, there are multiple time I am actually checking get role, right? Current user dot get role equals to member equals to admin. You can create certain utility methods, maybe some utility file inside that utility method, export that, is admin, is member functions, and use that instead in other places. So these are the two things that I'm giving you. I hope you enjoyed today's session. If you did so, please like this video, subscribe to the tapaScript, post a comment, and if you're stuck anywhere, comment, come to Discord or comment on this video. I'm going to help you out. I'm looking forward to see who is doing the enhancement that I'm giving and submitting to Discord. Coming next with day 35, where we are going to do real world code debugging. Excited? See you there.